how have you been doing in the year of destruction? How are things going for you?
Honestly, personally for me, this year has been a really good year. And I know a lot of people might say otherwise, but I actually got married this year. I moved
Oh,
into a new
nice.
apartment, got a new job, a really good job, and so this year has been very fruitful, to say the least. So,
That's awesome. Yeah. What a year to accomplish some of those things.
yeah, I know, right? It's
For me and my wife, we got married in 2017, and I'm here in Houston.
yeah.
So, 2017, it was the year that Harvey hit, and that was like our biggest,
Oh
one of
yeah,
our
I
worst
remember that.
hurricanes ever.
Yeah,
And
I
so we were
remember that.
supposed to get married that weekend. We ended up having to push it back because they closed down the courthouses and everything because it was all
Dang,
flooded.
dang, man,
So,
that stinks.
so sometimes we get married in trying times,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You got to see the bright side and everything, you know.
right?
Is that like pretty
Man.
common over there, like flooding and like hurricanes and stuff like that?
hmm Oh yeah, we I don't know, we evacuated probably I think two times we evacuated like it was pretty important that we evacuate, and then one
Yeah,
time it was just probably a good idea like this
yeah,
year alone.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
it's kind of like the wildfires in California or something, like you're used to it, so it's not as devastating as it
yeah,
looks on TV.
yeah, yeah.
And it's seasonal. It's from like July through November. We get all of our hurricanes. That's the
Mhm.
season. That's when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never really get hurricanes over here, so I was just I don't know. I don't ever know what that's like, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I mean, like where I'm at here in Houston, we tend to catch like it kind of goes up and around. So it's not as bad as like some of the places a little more east of us, like
okay.
Alabama and stuff. It just rolls like straight through them, just like,
Dang.
and
Yeah.
Houston's right there on the coast. So it kind of like hooks around us. So it's not nearly as devastating as it can be for some of
Yeah.
those places.
Dang. Well, that's good for you guys, right? That's good for you
Yeah.
guys.
Right. Plus, I
Yeah.
mean, Houston is such a big city. There's so much money in it. A
Yeah.
hurricane like Harvey, it was devastating, but they still rebuilt everything pretty quick. So
That's good. That's good to hear. That's awesome.
you're out in on the West Coast, right, in California?
Yep. I am in San Diego, actually.
Oh,
The
okay.
finest city in America. At least that's what they say. I don't know. I don't know. To me, it's just home, you know. To me,
Yeah.
it's just, I live here. But for the fires, because we get fire season, I think that San Diego County itself, except for like the eastern county, I live in like the western county. I live like 5 minutes away from the beach.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
we don't really get a lot of fires. Like we hear a lot about it. Same thing like with you, more so like with LA County, Orange County,
Hmm.
and the northern half really gets a lot of the fires. But I think we haven't had a major fire since like 2003 or something like that here
Oh,
in San Diego.
nice.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's a plus, huh?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I had my grandma and my aunt. They made a trip out to like San Diego for a vacation one time, maybe
yeah,
like late '90s, early 2000s,
yeah,
and that's probably the one vacation they talk about the most. Like they loved it out there. They thought it was
yeah.
amazing. They always talk about that one.
Dang, man. You know what? I love it here, but everyone always like comes here and I'm like, dude, don't move here. Please don't move here. Like we have enough people. Like my rent is already going super high. Like
Yeah.
just don't come here, please. I mean, come to visit,
hmm
please,
Yeah.
it's an amazing place and I would love the tourism money.
hmm
But you know what? We just have too many people moving here. It's just
Yeah.
it's not my rent is
It's
just already like up here.
Yeah. I mean, Texas, we have so much like open space. The crowding isn't as much of an issue, but there is a lot of influx of people from other states right now.
Yeah.
For all the problems I have with Texas and some of their politics and stuff, there's also a lot of things that we do that other places don't. And you see a lot of people fleeing from like California
That's what
and
I was about to say.
Nevada and stuff headed this way. So I'm like, come here, that's great, but like, don't make it what you're running away from either,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. I know so many friends of mine are moving actually to Texas, and I've thought
Mm,
about it because I know what a big house costs over there. It's like the same as like what I'm living in right now, you know. So it's tempting.
Yeah, well, once Joe Rogan came to Austin and told everybody what he spent on his like giant house, now everybody's like, "Oh, it is cheap."
Yeah. It's very tempting, you know. It's very tempting. I might have to come visit and see what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah, Houston's cool. I love Houston. A lot of diversity. Austin's amazing because they're kind of like California, Oregon, or something. Very
uh,
liberal and loose.
mhm.
And it's a lot of fun in Austin. And then San Antonio is just a beautiful city with like wonderful climate.
Yeah.
But actually, that really interests me because what's it called? Crossbones. Okay, Crossbones is set in Texas.
Yep.
Why? Like, have you been there? Do you know that area? Is that something that you chose to do, or why?
I have been to Texas like once in a layover. I've been to Oklahoma actually. I've been to Oklahoma and I spent like 2-3 weeks over there. And man, when I talk about there's nothing in Oklahoma, there seriously is nothing in Oklahoma. No shade to anybody that lives there. But man, there's nothing out there. But yeah, besides that, I actually have not been to Texas. The funny thing is the inspiration for the setting for Crossbones, San Diablo, is where I live. It's San Diego. So, there's a play on words, San Diablo, San Diego. It was just a big influence on me. But I didn't want it to be where I lived. I didn't want it to be San Diego. I didn't want that to be the setting of the story. And so, but I still wanted it to be a border town because that's kind of the whole point of the story. It's a border town. And so I was like, what's a place like San Diego? And immediately, because of, where I live like 20, not even 20 minutes, like 15, 10 minutes away from the border. I can actually look at the border from here. If I were to stick my head out the window, I can see I can see TJ. I can see Tijuana. And so I go to TJ like all the time. I go to get some TJ tacos, and people always tell me horror stories and stuff like that. And I know them, and I know I grew up listening to these horror stories, and I know exactly what goes on down there because I've been there and I've seen it. And so I was thinking, I was like, what is a place similar to the relationship that San Diego has with TJ? And immediately I thought of El Paso and Juarez, because I feel like we have a similar relationship with these cities. And that's kind of the whole point of the story with Crossbones, is that there is a relationship between these two countries. I mean, I myself, I'm Hispanic, I'm Mexican. Obviously, my name is Gonzalez. I have family down there. I have family down there, and I just thought it was important to tell a story between the. Sorry, my phone is going off right now. Let me mute that real quick.
Oh.
Man, sorry. I just felt it was important to tell the story between. That just wasn't one-sided. That it was something mixed, and that's what I thought of. I wanted to mix these two cities, like San Diego, TJ, Juarez, and El Paso, but I didn't want it to be those cities, and so I had to make one up.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, because I think I think that's part of what attached me to Crossbones so quick, was because I was born a white guy in white Texas, so poor me, but like my wife, she was born and raised in Mexico, and so like back in March, the week before everything shut down, we were in exactly there. Wow. Like her family lives in Brownsville, and we went down there. We crossed the border because, like, kind of like you described, like if you look out her family's like front door, like you can see the border. You can see Mexico.
Yeah.
And so we went down there, and we went over to Mexico for a day and stuff, like a week before they shut down, like that first week of March, And so that's an area that I'm familiar with. Like you said, like there are horror stories. Like I know people that tell you things, and she still has cousins and stuff that live there in Brownsville. You know, one of her cousins, in fact, is a border patrol agent down there.
Wow.
And so when we went into Mexico, like they have the eyes, you know, like I noticed them. I don't know how to do it, but I noticed them when we're driving, you know, they'll be like looking and watching, you know, because they can't. Like the cartels are very much dangerous and they will, if you have a nice car, they'll pull you out of your car and just take it, you
Yeah.
know, like they don't care.
Yeah, they don't.
And
Yeah.
yeah. But fortunately, all of my experience down there has been great. Has been very positive. I've always had good experiences crossing the border, going over there and stuff.
Yeah.
But like the way you describe and the way the art is laid out in Crossbones, like it's very much that Brownsville Matamoros crossing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that to me like clicked immediately, you know. And then all of her family and stuff. Like I'm always around the Hispanic culture. I'm pretty assimilated at this point, you know. So
that's good.
yeah, so like all the little words and stuff, and all the Latin flavor that you add to it, like it just it feels, I mean, almost like a Mexican crow or something. Like I just really love the way this character in this world felt, you know.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, myself being Hispanic, I mean, I'm Mexican. I grew up with these stories. I mean, you can see these things behind me, these influences that I have. I grew up reading comic books. I grew up watching the animated series, Batman the animated series. I grew up watching, X-Men, the animated series, and with these things in pop culture I grew up with, and being a Hispanic man, I longed for something similar to me. And I'm not saying anything about those things that I just named, like Batman, X-Men, whatever. I love those things and I don't desire them to change at all. But as a Hispanic man, I longed for a hero or a story or fill in the blank that was like me, because I longed for it. And so I caught myself like in high school, middle school, so on and so forth. Even into college, I would imagine this character, Crossbones. Back then he didn't have a name and he didn't really have a story, but I imagined him in my head and I knew what he looked like. I knew what, I know who he was, and so during that time in high school, college, middle school, I found myself fantasizing about this, hero or, this comic book. I didn't even know it was going to be a comic book at the time, but, I found myself longing to create this story because that's, as a Hispanic man, that's what I've longed for until now, and so now that I'm, older, I have the capability of doing it, now that I have, whatever capital,
Yeah. Well, and that actually touches on like I think somewhere else we can kind of connect that is like geographical representation,
Oh yeah.
like even on the spectrum of like privileged white male, there's this subspectrum of like when does Texas really get represented in the media?
Yeah.
At least like in comic books and like when I was growing up,
Yeah.
there was like the westerns and the cowboy movies before me, and then now these days there's stuff like True Detective, where they're doing these real gritty things in Texas, but when I was growing up, no characters ever represented how I felt about like the area of the country I grew up in. And so for this book to take place in such a familiar space for me, I think that's really cool because again, you're touching on a whole nother level of representation that even if you had set this in California, I feel like it would have been a little bit different because Hollywood and the media is there. And so you do see a lot of like California based stories, No Country for Old Men, like that was amazing the way they said it in West Texas and El Paso and stuff like this. But Crossbones feels like the first piece of media that I've really felt came from like a part of Texas and like a part of the country that's so blended, like even if you see like Florida on TV, they show like how Cuban culture is kind of mixed into American culture on TV and movies in Florida, but in Texas, you very rarely see how truly well blended the Hispanic culture has become in the southern part of Texas, and Crossbones is something that amazingly touches on that. And that's very relatable to so many people,
Yeah. I honestly, as much as I would here, let me think about what I'm trying to say. I just truly desired, because like you said, I feel like the story wouldn't really fit here if I wrote it here in San Diego. Like I just feel like it wouldn't be the same.
Hmm.
Like I know the setting, I know, this city, I know I've lived here my entire life. I know this
Yeah.
place. And so when I was writing it, the story originally, I originally kind of intended it to be here in San Diego, but then when I was really getting to the heart of it, I was like, this doesn't belong here. Like it doesn't belong here in San Diego. And so I really wanted it to feel natural. Yeah, I didn't want it to feel forced, because I'm here, so therefore it needs to be here in San Diego, here in California, whatever. And so I was like, I need to find a place. And so when I was like, I actually did some research. I was like, okay, where is like a border town? No, not Nevada, not Arizona. I mean, Nevada's not even on the border, but not Arizona, not New Mexico, not any of these places. And so when I found, Brownsville, I was like, this is kind of perfect, because
Yeah.
it was like, in a way, it was like kind of the opposite of San Diego, because it's on kind of like the other, like, side of the border,
Yeah.
or like, on the other coast of the border. It's
Hmm.
kind of like opposites. And so when I found that, I was like, man, this is it. Like, and so it just, when I found that place, it kind of just clicked in my mind. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I really don't really get to talk much about the setting of Crossbones, because as a creator, you just want to get the character most known, most
Hmm.
recognizable. And so
Yeah.
when I'm talking to people about Crossbones, I never really get to talk about the setting, which is San Diablo. And so just talking about it now, I'm just really excited, because it's like, this is like a big part of the story. And,
Yeah.
when I'm out talking with people and, kind of marketing the story, I guess, I don't really get to talk about the setting, because
Hmm.
it's just like, I need people to recognize the protagonist, or the antagonist, even sometimes.
Yeah.
So now that we're just talking about the setting, I'm like, man, this is like a character in of itself. The
Hmm.
setting, it has a characteristic of itself, and so I'm super
Oh yeah.
excited to be talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. I always thought Sicario. Sicario was a movie that like nailed the way that it created the world and the vibe, and it really
Yeah,
felt, because it does. Like again, I hate to say certain things, because it almost feels like people are gonna like think of the border the way that it's kind of represented. Like
yeah,
it doesn't feel dangerous, but there is a tension.
yeah,
Probably kind of like going through an airport, because TSA is there,
yeah.
and everything. When
That's
you
a good.
cross the border, there's guards and dogs everywhere, and there is this
Mhm.
like tension. And Sicario was a movie that just nailed that vibe and that feeling of border tension.
Yeah,
And the first two issues of Crossbones, not so much a focus there. I think mostly because those took place in like Mexico.
yeah,
But whenever you bring in the agents in the third book here, like it starts to feel a lot like Sicario. I'm like, okay, this is
yeah.
really like giving me goosebumps. Like it's really cool, because you can feel just like that extra level of tension, and like almost like violence is about to happen, but it may or may not
Oh
ever
boy.
actually happen.
Oh boy, is there ever. It's funny that you actually mentioned Sicario, because that is a big influence on the comic book itself. Because as I feel like you were just talking about it, just the whole subject matter of, I feel like, Mexican cartels, just like a few years ago. I mean, as soon as Narcos came out and Narcos Mexico, I feel like the whole um, topic kind of blew up. But back when
Oh yeah,
Sicario,
yeah. I have a friend. He works like in rural Texas, right?
uh
And he's like a Hispanic guy like you, born and raised here in Texas. His first language was Spanish, and
uh
then he pretty much became a white guy, and so he worked in a factory with all these white guys, and he would
yeah,
always tell us, like anytime like something would happen at home or whatever, after Sicario came, or after Narcos hit the waves,
yeah.
he would go to work. He's working with all these white guys in a factory, be like, "Oh yeah, this and this happened yesterday." Like, "Ay, lo siento, amigo." I'm like, yeah, that somehow Sicario and Narcos like completely changed culture, and it
It
started to
really
seep
did.
in. So,
Yeah, it really did, and I'm honestly really grateful for it, because
hmm.
honestly, it's hard to kind of separate that from fiction, you know, because in your mind it's like, oh, this is just a movie, or oh, this is just a Netflix show. Because I remember when I first watched Narcos Mexico specifically, I was watching it and I was like, wow, this is so good. Oh my God, this is like such a great, amazing like show and stuff. But then I realized these things happen, man. This is real life. And so I wanted to also tell this story to kind of bring light on this subject matter. And I think that Sicario and Narcos honestly really, like you said, really hit it on the head, because it's like, man, this is something that is honestly, genuinely happening, you know, in the real world. And so, I mean, Crossbones, it crosses that line into the fantastical, you know, with, you know, superpowers. And, you know, obviously we don't have a town over in Texas that is, you know, meshed together with a Mexican town, you know, it's like, you know, that's all fiction. But with that flavor of Narcos and Cartel, like that is all real, you know. That is a real
I mean, fictionalized versions of real events, but those things are happening every day. And that's that. I mean, I'm like you, like I feel very grateful that that kind of media has like caught on and people are watching it, because you know, like you don't know what's going on over there. Anybody who ever says like fleeing to this country from the southern border and not being considered for asylum, like that's insane to me, because these shows and these movies are telling you like this is what's happening, you know. And I think that opening scene in, well, it's not the opening scene, but in the first book of Crossbones, whenever they're driving and they fall into the ditch and stuff, 100%. Like at that point, it lets you know like this is like real cartel stuff, because that's how they do it. Like they trap each other, you know. Like this guy gets a hint, and so this guy gives, and there's rats and everything, and it's always like crisscrossing. And then in the third one, you know, you see the video footage of the shootouts in the towns and stuff. Like these are innocent people. There's a woman with her little girl right there, and the news cuts away from her getting shot in the head. Like that's real life. That's what it's like down there for these people that are fleeing from violence. And I'm thankful that there is media out there that shows that, because that's the unfortunate bad side of what like borders and politics are doing, because that's where a lot of the power is coming from, is that wall they want to build so bad, you know?
Yeah, it's true. And honestly, like as a Hispanic, as a Mexican, I love Mexico. I love going down there, and I love spending time there. I love eating the food there. I love the culture. But man, Mexico is just in a bad state right now, you know, and it's not because of the people themselves, you know, it's not because of, you know, Mexicans, but it's because of bad people. And there are bad people everywhere in the world, you know, there's bad people here. And so that's when I like, when I hear people tell me like, oh, don't go down there, like there's terrible people there. And it's like, dude, there are terrible people here in San Diego. Like, you know, San Diego has a really high rate of sex trafficking. And it's like, dude, I thought this was America. I thought this was, you know, the land of the free and the safe, you know. It's like, dude, no. Just because there's a border right there doesn't mean that these bad people go away, you know. And so I long for, you know, a sort of change, you know, the change of perspective of like, it's not necessarily the individuals themselves, but the fact
because there's good people there.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Like, why are you going there? I'm going there because there's good people there, you know. Like there's so many more good people. Just good people have less weapons, and the border and the American laws have created a certain sense of power. You know, if weed was as worthless on the street here as it is there, it wouldn't be powerful to move it across the border, you know. Like that's where they get the money, that's where they get the power, you know. They don't have the government structure to fight against that kind of stuff, you know. It's too easy to corrupt a police officer. And you know, so like to me, that's where the biggest mistake is. Like, how much could we be doing if we would, you know, kind of help stabilize the Mexican government and make them immune to corruption. Make sure that they have all the resources they need so that the cartel can't possibly sell enough weed in order to like fund the country. You know, like that's the problem.
Exactly. And it's just like, but people don't want that. People just
Yeah.
want the easy way out, and it's like, man, I desire, like, because, especially because I live here. I live, like, again, 10 minutes away from the border. I
Hmm.
desire, like, we're neighbors. We're like legitimate neighbors,
Yeah.
me and them, like us and them and whatever. It's like we're legitimate neighbors. And if I were to look at my neighbor and say, oh, just because your situation is worse, I'm just going to build, an emotional or even a physical wall around you, like, therefore it's not going to leak onto me. But it's like, man, like, their baggage is kind of leaking onto ours, and like
Hmm.
I strive, or not strive, I mean, I hope to one day strive, to help make, you know Mexico even better, like,
Yeah.
like you said, just to be stable, and isn't
Hmm.
that just like the goal, is just to be at least stable,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's weird.
No, no, I feel you on that, because I mean that's kind of the big argument we're going through right now with universal basic income and universal health care and stuff, is like what the people in favor of this are saying is like there should be a bare minimum. If we're a first world country, there should be a floor that says like nobody falls below here.
Hmm.
And that's the argument for it, and that's kind of how I feel about Mexico. Like, as their neighbor, like we're at the point where we're basically driving through the bad neighborhood and we're locking the doors.
Yeah.
But if they really wanted the stuff in our car, they would just break the windows.
Yeah. I know, right?
That's kind of how putting this whole wall up and all that feels. Is like we're just gonna, if we can't see them, it's not bad.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about Mexico as our neighbor. We should be providing not the same floor for them that we have for our own country, but wouldn't it be in our best interest to provide some kind of floor that says like at least things won't get this bad,
Yeah,
so that the
exactly.
government knows like we can't afford enough uniforms for all of our police officers, but it'll be okay because the cartels won't have all the power
There,
without the uniform.
there you go. Yeah, there you go. It's actually really funny. Even before, like, 2016 and this whole wall talk,
Hmm.
San Diego and TJ have actually had a wall for like years. We've had a wall
Yeah.
for years and years, and it's like, I mean, when we first heard about it, it's like, I mean, isn't there already one?
Hmm.
And so it's really funny. And so in the story of Crossbones, I made it a point that there wasn't a wall or there
Hmm.
wasn't a border. I wanted it to be a point that the readers knew that this was one city, that this was one town, like cut in half by two countries maybe, but they're just meshed together, and now both their problems are each other's problems. And so later on, I'm so excited because it's like, man, as an indie creator, it's like I want to write that right now. I want to get
Yeah.
to that right now. But I also want the story to be fairly paced. I don't want to rush things and be like, like these things over here are crazy, and it's like, wait, what? I thought we were talking about this over here. So that's the struggle
Well,
of an indie creator.
yeah. Well, let me ask you about that though, because I thought it was really cool the way that you intro the first book and everything, and they're listening to the radio and they're telling you who Crossbones is. And
Mm,
then like as things progress, like you kind of have like the news there to like build the world around them and explain the border situation and that beautiful like symmetrical map of San Diablo and all that. Like
yeah.
all of that's really cool. So like how long and how hard did you work to find a way to deliver all that? Like, was that first scene like that from the beginning, or did it take you a long time to figure out how to work all of the geography into it?
So originally I just had that idea from the start, the whole idea of San Diablo. And honestly, it was all Roman, my artist. And so
Hmm.
I gave him this idea. And I was like, this is the setting and this is the idea behind the setting. And then I mean, I knew how I wanted to start the book. I knew that from the get-go, I wanted people to realize what this city was, what the setting was, just to establish this world in a way, just to be like, this is the world. This is a different world than the one we live in, but it's similar, and this is the way that it is. And so when I passed that on to Roman and I told him, I gave him the script and everything, I passed it on to him, and I was just anxiously waiting for that one. The second page, I believe, is the one with the map, and he honestly just what he did was he looked on Google Maps, he went on Google Earth, and just drew it. And he just, and I was like, man, I'm really glad you didn't like, do any drastic changes to the layout of how it actually is, because that's honestly perfect. I want it to feel real. I wanted it to feel like, honestly, this could happen in real life.
Hmm.
Obviously it's an extreme, sure.
Yeah.
But I wanted it to feel grounded and real, and I honestly think that he executed it really well.
Yeah. Yeah, like geopolitically speaking, there's absolutely no way that that could ever become a reality. At least I
Yeah,
can't see how it would. But it does feel like that. Like as you're going through Brownsville, the closer you get to the border crossing,
yeah,
the more it starts to feel like Mexico.
uh-huh,
And then once you cross into Mexico, it starts to feel more like Mexico the farther you get from the border, So
mhm.
there's this like perfect blend right there in the middle where it feels the same right on both sides.
Yeah,
But the way he does the map in America, right? We
mhm.
have these like big buildings, they tend to have like rounded corners and they're kind of away from the street, right? So
Yeah,
you'll have like the edge of the building and then you'll have like this big sidewalk, and if there's a corner it's like got this big rounded section, like, and you can pull up to a red light and you can kind of see down the street. Not in Mexico.
yeah.
There,
Yeah,
there's no
yeah,
sidewalks. Like most of the roads you're driving on, they feel like alleys,
uh-huh,
and their walls are like straight concrete, right?
yeah,
So literally, like all of their houses are like perfect boxes and stuff, and they're
mhm.
right there at the edge of the street. And so if you look at that from a top-down view, it looks exactly like what he drew.
Yeah,
It looks like a maze because there's no distance between the street and the sidewalk. There's no grass in the middle. There's no median or anything, and
yeah,
that just blew me away, like how accurate it was.
yeah.
Because I don't know him, but it sounds like he's not even from this area or been there. So like to know how to do that, like it's just incredible that y'all pulled all of this off.
Yeah,
It's kind of the same thing with that Texas blood that takes place in a part of Texas that my dad's always been fascinated with. So we went there a lot as kids and stuff. And then that Texas blood, it's written by a guy from New Jersey, and the
wow.
art's done by Jacob Phillips,
Yeah,
which I believe he's centered in England. So
wow.
like, and they nail it. It feels just like my trips as a kid into Marfa and all that out in West Texas. Like they nailed, and I'm just like, how? I don't get that. There's no way I could do a New York City story. I could not possibly nail that vibe.
Yeah. It's funny because Roman is from Russia, but he lives in Costa Rica. And so it's funny because it's like exactly like you said. It's like how did he know? Like
Yeah.
how like it's crazy. But honestly, I think he's just a genius. I love working with Roman. Roman is honestly a godsend, and how I met him was just by chance. I honestly just I was like looking on some page looking for artists, and then he was the first one I saw, and he was the first person I messaged about the project, and it was just like a perfect like setup. It was like a
Yeah.
match made in heaven, and so honestly, I wouldn't want to tell this story with anyone else. That man's a
Yeah.
genius.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like his style and everything, like there's a big skill gap between the first and third issue.
Oh
Like
yeah,
he's definitely
yeah.
improved.
He's progressing. Yeah,
Yeah, and at no point did I think he was bad, but there's a certain like rudimentary thing going on in that first issue, especially that it works perfect for the story you're trying to tell because
yeah.
it looks as like rough and gritty and homegrown as anything in Mexico. Like
Uh-huh.
when I was in Mexico, like people were just like pouring rocks out into the road, like in potholes and stuff,
Yeah.
like it's all like homegrown. Like they take care of their street because that's where they live and they have to
Hmm.
drive on it. They're not
Yeah.
waiting for the city to come fix it. And,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of how that first Crossbones felt was like, this is two guys just making a project because they're telling a story, and they don't really have like big money behind them, but they believe in what they're doing, and
Yeah.
that's the spirit of Mexico, and that's definitely the spirit of Crossbones.
Yeah, it definitely is. I appreciate him. I love working with Roman, and like you said, he's just progressed so far.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I look back, I think I read Crossbones issue 1 for the first time in like forever the other day, and I was like, man, oh my gosh, like this looks so different. Like, holy cow, you know, because
Yeah.
he's working on issue 4 as we speak. He just sent me, you know, roughs of, you know, the pages he's working on, and like to go and to look at, you know, the first issue again, it's like, holy cow, man. Like, because even myself, I lettered the first book myself. I lettered all the books, all the issues myself, and I look at my old lettering and I almost kind of cringe. I'm like, oh my god, like, oh, that's so terrible. I mean, it's probably not all that much better, you know, compared to, you know, the professionals, you know, professional letterers and all that.
My only complaint with the lettering is oh man, oh Sharon.
Sharon.
Yeah.
Oh, Sharon. Yeah.
Sharon. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. His letters, and I think it was only in the second issue when he appears, right?
Uh-huh.
But like his first time, like the letters and stuff, there was like a ghosting effect or something on there, and that was kind of weird. But it seems like you went a little more HD in the newer issues,
Yeah.
and it looks much clearer, and I do like that better.
Yeah.
But also, in all fairness, I absolutely hate the way that they letter Thor books. Like that stupid extra tail on everything
Yeah.
throws me off. I cannot stand that font. So
Yeah.
that was probably the other part of my problem with him. But I
I'll
love
keep
him
that
as
in
a
mind.
character. He's so cool. Actually, let's just start there. Like, at what point did you know that like Supernatural was going to be involved, and you were going to send him to the River Styx and Hades and all of that stuff? Like, when did you know that was going to be a thing?
Honestly, from the beginning. I'll let you in on a little bit of a secret. Not a lot of people know this. Actually, only one other person besides myself knows this. And so I was heavily influenced by the Divine Comedy, Dante's Divine Comedy. And so if you notice, there's a lot of Easter eggs to that. I mean, you know, Crossbones' name is Dante.
Mm-hmm.
In the second issue, we meet a character named Virgil, who leads Dante through hell.
Mm-hmm.
And in the third issue, we meet Beatrice, who was Dante's lover, or his, you know, his love in you know, back then. And so I was super heavily. I mean, I have an illustrated book of Dante's Inferno. I mean, and then there you go, another one, Inferno himself. So the book itself is super influenced by the Divine Comedy, just the heaven and hell, even purgatory and all that. I wanted to tell a story about a character who's literally traveling from, you know, this point of like hell, and, you know, progressing towards something, just like the
Mm-hmm.
Divine Comedy. And so that's kind of like the whole point of the story itself, is that he's starting off from, you know, point 1, the Inferno, which is, you know, the name of the first issue, Enter the Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
And he's progressing towards, you know, something, and that's kind of like the whole story of, you know, Crossbones himself. It's a redemption story about the, you know, this dude who was once evil and, you know, did all these atrocities. He's progressing as a human being, you know. And so I don't know, when I first came up with the idea, I wanted these elements of the Divine Comedy to be attached to it, but
Mm-hmm.
not like in your face attached to it. I mean, to a point it is, to those who know the story and know, you know, the poem. It is kind of in your face in that way, but I wanted it to be directed
Yeah.
in that direction, in that general direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, good news for you. I know pretty much nothing about the Divine Comedy, so
It's a great
so
poem.
none of that came across. But what is amazing is like for me, I was like, oh, this is Mexican culture. Like that's how
Mhm.
the Mexican Catholicism follows a lot of that stuff, you know. And I was like,
Yeah.
I totally get it. Like you can be a terrible like young adult, you could be part of the cartels, but as you get older, you learn to repent. You know, that's kind of
Mhm.
their take on it. You know.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how I saw it, you know, and like you explained, like that turn. Whenever Dante sees the news of innocent people being killed because they're caught up in you know, in the middle of a gang war that I'm not gonna say he started, but you know, he has
No,
a part
started.
in
Yeah.
playing and all that. Yeah, and to see him turn on that and realize like this is the effects of all my actions, like it really felt coming of age. You know, I think
Mhm.
every person, you know, hits that point where like it's all fun and games, you know, until somebody loses an eye, you know, but
Yeah.
this time lives were lost, you know, and he really realized it. And I thought that was really powerful, you know, the way that you handled all that. But I've never read the Divine Comedy. I know very little of what it's even about.
I would read it. It's a really good poem. It's really long. It's really really long. But you know, if you want to, if you're interested in it, there's actually a
Oh yeah.
line that Charon says when we first meet him, and he actually word for word, I repeated it straight from the poem itself. He says something along, I completely forgot. It's like so long that I've read it, but you know, he gives the woes to Dante, like woe to you, for I am, you know, it is I who lead the
Yeah,
dead
when he
into, you know,
explains who he is, and then he's
yeah,
like exasperated because he's like, "Oh, I guess y'all just like don't read this classic stuff anymore, so
yeah,
you forget about me."
yeah. And so that's literally
There
word
we
for
go. That
word
makes even
from,
more sense.
yeah, it's word for word from the poem.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I've never read the Divine Comedy. I know it exists. You know, I've always
yeah,
known it's a thing, but yeah, I never read it.
yeah,
It's kind of an epic poem, though, like Homer, right?
yeah, yeah. It's really really long, and I don't think I've ever really finished it because it's like so long. But it's really interesting. I don't know, I because I read it back in high school, and it really made that connection with me, you know. And so all these years I've been carrying it around with me in my back pocket. So yeah.
So okay, so we see he goes down to the river, he sees Charon, he goes through the whole ordeal, you know.
Yeah.
He wakes up. Now, Charon is like he's kind of a guide, but he's like so direct it's almost like unbelievable, you know? Like
Yeah.
he's telling him literally step for step what he needs to do to repent and get a second chance, and he ignores it, assuming that this is just a crazy guy.
Yeah.
But he wakes up to El Viejo, and El Viejo is like a less direct guide for him, and really
Oh,
that's kind of who teaches him to grow up, all in like this moment, you know. So
yeah.
and you totally nailed like the old grandpa El Viejo vibe with that character. Like it was
Yeah.
incredible. I was like, that's my wife's uncle, like
Yeah.
9,000,000%, you know. So is that from also from the Divine Comedy, or is this something that you were like, well, he needs something, another type of influence to bring him back to realizing how like honest Sharon's really being with him?
Well, the character that he's inspired by, he shares the name with Virgil, and so that's literally who in the Divine Comedy who leads Dante through the Inferno, through hell. And so in my mind, I knew that he needed, like you said, a guide, you know, somebody to guide him back to life, you know, back to being a human being, you know, because back when he was living the life of a cartel member, I would say that he was, you know, like a subhuman, like somebody who wasn't even human, you know. And you
Mhm.
know, here comes this guy who brings him and makes him realize, you know, what you did was wrong, but you need to change. You have the capability of changing, of being a new human being, of coming back to life, you know. And so I knew he needed somebody like that. And you know, I have so many, sorry, I have the hiccups, but I have so many people like that I know that I can think of that are similar to Viejo, to Virgil, you know. And it's like I would be lying if I didn't know, say that he was, you know, based on, you know, somebody I knew in real life, you know. You know, how he looks, how his mannerisms, you know, how he is, you know, he's based on somebody I know, you know. And so um I because I wanted him to feel like, you in a way you kind of said, homegrown, or like familiar, I guess is the word. I wanted him to feel familiar, you know, this character of Viejo, Virgil. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it's awesome because it is like Sharon kind of tells him like, all right, so here's the outline: step one, step 2, step 3,
Yeah.
and he meets Virgil, and um, his thing there is like Virgil comes at him very like world weary, you know. He's like
Mhm.
this old man that's in his older years, and he's able to outline things and make it make more sense because of the wisdom he's gained from like his long life, you
Yeah.
know. And but what I want to give you the most props on for that scene is like whenever he goes to hit him with the shovel and he like comes up with the bone, like
Yeah.
freeze frame, like Hollywood moment right there. Like if there's a movie or a cartoon or anything like that, that shot has to make it, because I was like,
Yeah.
if he does not stop that shovel with this bone, like
Yeah. Yeah.
he stopped him, he's like, oh man, stop hitting me, you know, like.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. But I mean, like, even that, it's like, it's so, I don't know. It reminds me, like, because as a Mexican, like, my mom would hit me over the head with like a chancla and stuff like that. So that's what I thought about. I was like, this Mexican guy has to try to hit somebody, you know, over the head with something,
Yeah.
you know. And so that's why I kind of threw that in there, but also to like kind of, you know, bring that cool, you know, as you said, element in there, you know. But we'll see a lot of that, you know, bone throwing in issue 4. I'll throw that in there as a little. Issue 4 is super action packed. I mean, these pages that I just got back from Roman, they're just rough drafts, and I'm like, holy cow, these things! It's gonna be wild. You know, it's gonna be a wild ride. You know.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, because the first 2 issues are kind of like a, you know, A and B story or something, you know, very like back to back, and they kind of establish Crossbones and the people closest to him.
Mm-hmm.
In the 3rd issue, though, you introduce some they're drug agents, right, or like CIA or something.
DEA.
DEA. There we go.
Yeah.
So, what's the idea there? Like, when and why did you bring them in and everything? Why even more characters in a government agency?
Well, I wanted to kind of make the statement that the United States did not have control of the situation going on in the city. And so I know it's like a huge blurb on those, you know, those pages. It's just like information in your face. And so I just needed to get those point across, you know, those points. I just wanted to make the point that, you know, that the United States didn't have control of what was going on, you know, and so they needed to send these agents to, in a way, kind of just, you know, recon what was going on, but like they couldn't necessarily interfere because, you know, they just couldn't control it. You know, they you know, all the things going on, they just couldn't control it. And so, but I also wanted these characters also to feel human. And so I introduced, you know, Beatrice in there. And so I wanted her to feel grounded, not just as a agent, you know, a drone, like a government drone. You know, I didn't want her to feel like just doing your job and I need to do this job because my boss told me I had to, but I wanted her to feel human, because, you know, again, that's kind of like the whole point of the comic, of the series, is that here are real people going through situations that are, of course, extreme. Again, they're extreme, but they're going through these circumstances. And how would a real life person, if she were to witness, you know, something horrible going on in front of her, how would she react? And then in turn, how would her boss react to her reacting that way? You know, and so it's just I needed these moments to feel human and not just like an information blurb. You know, I don't know.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that also kind of ties back a little bit to what I was saying earlier about how the news and the radio and the TV and stuff kind of builds the world, because everywhere they go, like there's some kind of device with news on in the background saying like this is what's going on and stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and like not that that's a negative thing. I think it's a genius way, because you're always like, and here's kind of what I think about like bringing in these extra agents too, is it pulls the action or the perspective away from being within the gang,
Mm,
within the cartel. You know, like it's a much different perspective when Dante was in the cartel at the beginning versus now that he's separate from the cartel.
mm,
And I think, kind of like you were talking about, like I want people to see that this is a thing, but at the same time, I don't want to like romanticize this thing. I
mm.
think by showing a lot of the like gang and cartel warfare and stuff through the news or through the eyes of the agents and Crossbones, I think it kind of like, I don't know, kind of humanizes and dehumanizes it at the same time.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't romanticize because we see
Yeah,
like innocent people dying, but at the same time, it's saying like, look how gratuitous this is, and like
yeah,
that this is such a problem. It's affecting everyday people.
yeah, yeah. And honestly, that's a topic that I really want to like hammer in later on in the series. Like, and again, it kind of just goes back to being an indie creator. Like, I'm not like Marvel or DC where I'm able to like
Mhm.
push comics out every week. It's I have to slowly build this world, slowly but surely. I
Yeah.
don't even know. I don't even know how often these things are coming out. Maybe like once a year. I want to get faster though, but at the same time, it's like this. I want to eventually tackle the topic of the actions that Crossbones has committed in his life has affected real people, and so that's where I got the idea of, when Sharon touches his forehead, he goes back and witnesses all of the things that he's done in his
Mhm.
life. He's witnessed all the people that he's murdered, all the innocent people, and not so innocent people, but they're still people, all the people that he's murdered and tortured and all these horrible things. And later on in the story, I want to remind people also, and to remind him as a character, that the people did not forget about that. That the people did not forget what you've done.
Mhm.
Necessarily, like, you don't necessarily just get to be forgiven because you are doing good things now, but the things that you've done in your past is still are affecting people today and in the present. I
Mhm.
don't want him to just commit things and then just move on in his life and have, a happy ending and a happy, go lucky, whatever. I want him to feel the gravity of the things that he's done. And so that's just going to be a reoccurring thing in the series as we continue forward, is that he is just going to have to live with this,
Yeah.
try to be a better human being, but live with the things that he's done.
Well, and isn't there a moment like that somewhere where after that happens, he kind of repents, right? He realizes like
Yeah.
the true effect that everything that he's done.
Mm.
Because it kind of goes back to that thing, like you kind of piecemeal your life, every day feels like nothing. But if you could zoom out and see the week or the month or like all of the actions you went through in a year, like how
Yeah.
much impact you had. And so he does, like he sees everybody in mass at once and realizes how big of an impact his life has had everywhere else. And
Yeah.
then I want to say there was a little bit later, right, where there's a scene where somebody recognizes him as Crossbones, and he kind of freaks out, like, "No, no, no, I'm not Crossbones, I'm Dante or whatever," right? Or did I
Yeah.
make that up? I might have, but
Yeah.
I feel like there was something like that though, where he is recognized, or he doesn't want to be recognized as Crossbones anymore, and it legitimately seems like it's a concern for him that he doesn't want to be recognized as the
Recognize as
cartel
that.
Crossbones anymore.
Yeah. I don't know if that is. Man, I need to go back and read my stuff. But that might be, that would be, something that is, um, that would be canon in the book, because he doesn't want to be, what's the word, recognized, or not because, like, oh, my identity is blown, but because of the implication of what that
Yeah,
means. The
yeah.
implication that you are crossbones and you are a horrible, horrible person. You know,
Well, he
and
thinks of himself as like a guy that like he might be doing the wrong thing, but like he's doing it for the right reasons.
mhm,
And I think there's like the news persona, like we hear on the radio way at the beginning, like the version of Crossbones that they talk about on the radio right at the beginning. That's who he wanted to be until he died and
yeah,
realized. And now he still wants to be Dante. He still wants to be Crossbones. He doesn't want to be the media version of
yeah.
what they've created.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm just talking about it. I'm like, man, I just need to, like, keep writing like the issues in the future. I'm like, I just need to get to writing all this stuff. I'm just super excited to talk about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I am excited to see what the future of what Crossbones brings, and just the whole world of Crossbones and the whole entire universe, even the, Covenant universe that, we're a part of. It's so exciting, the future and what it holds for this character, and how
Mhm.
he's going to progress, and what he's going to inevitably be. I'm going to say there are, including issue 4, there are probably about 3 more issues in the volume, first volume. So 6 total. And from there, I honestly don't see an end. I don't see an end for this character yet. I mean, personally, I don't want it to end. I mean, there might be people who want to see it end. But I
I'm
personally
not one
don't,
of those people. Yeah. Keep it
personally, I don't want
going.
to see it end. And so I'm really excited for what the future holds and who he transforms to be, because
Mhm.
again, in my mind, I don't really necessarily have an end game, and so it's like who he becomes inevitably is open. He might be, he might turn into be, evil again. I don't know. You
Yeah.
never know. I only know what I know right now. And so
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see who he transforms to be, because again, he's not real, he's fictitious. And so, his future, like mine, is is
Undetermined.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that's why I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you said something earlier that kind of points to longevity and kind of that superhero nature built into it, is that he's trying to repent for what he did, except for there's no real, there's no way to quantify how much repentance is required,
Mhm.
And so therefore he's always going to be in pursuit of becoming a better person and repenting for like all the things he did when he was in the cartel. So
Yeah.
that to me points to like an unlimited mission.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Again, I'm trying so hard not to like spoil anything, because like there are so many things that I could say right now, but I'm just gonna say that he, like you said, is just gonna try to be better, attempt to be better, and like I don't think that us as human beings necessarily know what that means, to be better. What does that end goal look like? How am I to just be better than who I am right now? I mean, I've never killed anybody, sure, I've never, even, stolen from anybody. I mean, maybe I have, and so, but it's like, what does it mean for me to become better? I don't think there is really an end goal to that. And so, and likewise, what you were just saying, it's like, it's going to be unending, this pursuit of trying to be better, this unending pursuit of trying to be a good man, a good human being, and so that's the tale of Crossbones, and I always have difficulty giving that elevator pitch to people. It's like, oh, what is the story about? It's like, man, like, do you well, you see, it's about this dude. But that's basically it. It's this evil man trying to be better.
Yeah.
And he grows bones from his skin. you know?
Yeah, and it's awesome. I really like it. I really enjoy it. Are you in a hurry? Do you have more time?
No. I have, my wife actually just left, so I have all the time in the world.
Yeah, well, I mean that pretty much covers like all of Crossbones and everything. I think there's like hours and hours I could spend asking about it, but you probably don't want to talk about it, and people are probably need to read before they hear about it. But what I would like to ask you about is Covenant Comics. This is the very first Crossbone issues was already marked with Covenant Comics, and
Mhm.
Covenant Comics has expanded since Crossbones was the first title. So,
Yeah.
what is Covenant Comics? Where did that come from, and how did that come to be?
So Covenant Comics, oh, hold on. Sorry, I got hiccups again. Sorry. So Covenant Comics, it basically was just me and my friends. I don't know if you know our tagline, a universe created at a lunch table. That's where it originated from. It originated from me and my friends sitting at lunch, like during lunch period at a lunch table, just talking about these characters. Talking about this world, this universe that we inevitably wanted to tell. Eventually, they all kind of fell apart, except for one, my good friend Jesse Chisholm. And so after we graduated high school, again, we kind of went our own ways, me and him. We both kind of went to college and, whatever, went our ways. We went to work and, did all this stuff. And then in 2016, I believe he messaged me first, during, the years, the story of CROSSBONES was always in the back of my mind. And I just never told anybody about it. But in 2016, I believe November of 2016, he messaged me and he was like, "Hey, do you ever think about those things, those stories we used to talk about at lunch?" And of course I said, yes, of course. And so that was the origin of Covenant Comics. We reunited, rekindled that love for telling stories that we, once had in high school. And then in 2018 is when I started production on CROSSBONES, and we finished it, and then we, quote unquote, published it in 2018, in the November of 2018. And that was, like you said, our flagship launch title. It was CROSSBONES issue 1. And at that time, we had no idea what we were doing. I mean, I posted that thing anywhere and everywhere. I posted it to, where did I post it to? Indie Planet, and I posted it to, I even posted it to Imgur on Reddit. I posted it. I posted it to where, anywhere and everywhere, because I wanted people to read it, and then we took it down from these sites, and we established Covenant Comics. And so that same year we launched our social media. Came to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We don't really use Facebook or Twitter now these days. It's mainly just Instagram. As time went on, he launched his book, Ether, issue 1, which actually just came out earlier this year. Goodness. And then along the way, we've picked up Jesse James Bear, who is the creator and writer of Burlap, which is an amazing title, might I say to you. He's an amazing guy. I love both those Jessies. It's kind of funny that they're both named Jesse. I love them both. But it's different with Jesse Bear because we didn't grow up together like me and Jesse Chisholm did. Me and him, we've been lifelong friends since, high school. Jesse Bear, like, we met over email. Like, he emailed us and was like, "Hey, I need somebody to publish my book." And I read it and I was like, heck yes. Like, this is an amazing book, and it's kind of mind-boggling that you want to join us, like a bunch of nobodies. So it's kind of strange, but we added him, and he's been just an amazing addition to our team. Like, he has just single-handedly grown our brand as Covenant, and just him as a person is just a wonderful human being. Same thing with Jesse Chisholm, and he knows that,
I was gonna say, but he's probably heard that.
And then shortly after we launched Ether,
talk about Ether a little bit, because that one I saw the ad or whatever. I think it was at the end of the first CROSSBONES, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't know if I missed the Kickstarter or what happened. Anyway, I have not read Ether. I don't even know what. I just know he's like a Scottish cop. I don't know. That's why you need to talk about it, so I have a better idea.
So Ether has been in production since we began, and so since 2018 until we just launched in 2020. So it's been 2 years. It's been in production. So Ether is about, oh my gosh, it's like me talking about CROSSBONES. Like, where do I start? Ether is about a 7-foot Scotsman police officer. And so I'm just going to give you the gist of the story. He is a police officer with his best friend Chester in Scotland. There's a town, I don't remember it. And inevitably there is this, I'm just going to say, this magical thing that happens to both of them. I'm not going to say what, because that would be spoilers. Something happens to them in the magical sense and transforms both of them. And I feel like I'm not doing it justice because it's a great story. But inevitably, his best friend disappears, and he disappears somewhere we don't know yet. And then so this whole story is about Ether. Holy cow, what is his name? Scott Finnegan. There you go. I just remembered his name. Sorry, I didn't establish that as his name earlier. So it's the story of Scott trying to find his best friend. Meanwhile, all of these, magical, otherworldly things are going on at the same time. I'm really trying not to spoil it. I'm really terrible at summarizing things, but that's basically the gist of it. And so issue 2 is right now in production. We just got a new illustrator for it. So the artwork is, it is superb. Holy cow. So I'm really excited for issue 2 to come out because I am in love with this title. I love it so much. And so keep your eyes out for Ether issue 2 coming hopefully next year. Early next year. So we're scheduling our Kickstarter.
Like 2 months or like 14 months.
Yeah, no, it'll be. It's because I'm thinking about the Burlap Kickstarter, which is launching in January. So we're gonna have to schedule the Ether one after that. So maybe in February or March of 2021 is when Ether will come out. So yes.
Cool. Okay, so and then Burlap, I have 4 issues of that.
You do. You got it.
Yeah, like I went on. I think it was on your website, right? Because I think I missed the Kickstarter on that too, and then you tweeted or grammed or something about like it was on the website, and I was like, oh man, I missed that. And I just went and bought all 4 digital copies. Unfortunately, I haven't read them. I've read through the beginning with like the Peter Cottontail thing.
Yeah,
I have no clue what to expect from this. It starts out so like off the wall. Yeah. So what is Burlap, and like what is this about?
Burlap. Oh my god, Burlap. Man,
because you're so good at summaries, I wanted to keep making you do them.
It's actually so funny. There's like this hashtag going around that we didn't start. Some just people in the community started. It's hashtag, if you aren't reading Burlap, you're stupid. I think that's the most funny thing because it's like, we didn't start that. Like some people in the community started that. And so I think that's just like the funniest thing. Anyways, so the basic gist of Burlap is it is essentially a slasher horror slash superhero story. So, but it's a twist, and so instead of being from the perspective of the victims like are being slashed by this horrible monstrous slasher guy, it is the hero is actually the slasher and the victims are the villains. And so the villains, the whole story is from the perspective of the victims slash villains of the story. And meanwhile, it has this great story, like backstory behind it. And I'm not going to give that to you because you need to read it. But it is, honestly, it is written and it flows so magnificently. I love that story. I love it so much.
Wow. So what is the Kickstarter for? Is there another story arc coming out from that, or?
So the next Kickstarter that is coming out in January, it is for the 90s Nightmare trilogy, which it takes place during one night in Volume 1. So Volume 1 is issues 1 through 4, and those are already released. And so this new Kickstarter is for this, what happens in between this one night, or not, it's actually not one night. Sorry. False information. It's what happens, before, Volume 1, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's really good. I've had the pleasure of lettering one of those issues coming out, and might I say it is really good, and the lettering is phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to read that. It's one of those, it always slips my mind when I'm looking through things to read. But it's a series that I know, like, since you announced it, I remember the day you dropped the announcement, you might have even told me the announcement was coming
Yeah.
before it happened. But I remember like how big of a deal it was for y'all to announce Burlap, and every time that it's come up, the way you talk about it, you know, I know how you talk about Crossbones, your own series. I know how you talk about Ether, your best friend series. And the way you talk about Burlap is just like next level, man. So I really need to read it. There's no
Yeah.
reason I haven't read it yet, but
It's really good, man. I don't get me wrong, I love both Crossbones and I love Ether. Ether, yes, said that right. It's just I've known these stories
Mhm.
for years. I've known both Crossbones and Ether for years, and so I know the entire everything. But Burlap is like so new. Not so. It's been like a year since he's been on here with us, but it's like it's a new story that belongs with our own universe, and it just flows so well. And I'm just so in love with it because he the way that I look at it is he chose us. You know, Jesse emailed us and he chose us, a bunch of nobodies, you know? And that's the way I think about it, is like we're nobodies, and yet this guy chose to be part of us. And you know, it's not like he's, you know, a loser like us. He's really cool. He's a really cool guy with a really cool story.
Well, man, I can tell you, you're not a loser and you're not nobodies, because there's a lot of nobodies that want to make a comic book, and you made 4 of them
Yeah.
with Ether, you know, plus
Yeah.
all the Burlap. So
Yeah.
y'all are nobodies. Y'all are doing stuff, man. Like y'all, and you can tell like the quality improves every time, the efficiency improves every time. Like you can tell that you are just some guys that are really passionate about comics, and I'm sure you've talked to other people and got advice from everyone, but you can see that like you're learning this process, and I think that's really cool to see. You know, and anybody that's going to call themselves a publisher, to see growth, you know, and development, and know that like they are actually building towards something and not just like doing this for a hobby all the time, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Because I mean, the way that we look at it is obviously we want to inevitably, you know, get money from it, to be blunt. To be
Yeah,
blunt,
yeah.
we want money from it. But at the same time, like this, first and foremost, is our passion. You know, this is what we love to do. I love telling stories and I love making comics. And I can say the same for both Jesse's. You know, I can tell that they also likewise love to tell stories and they love making comics. And so, as much as we want to make money, the first and foremost goal of Covenant Comics is to tell great stories and to spread these stories out into, you know, into the ether, into the universe, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, that's something that's really important, especially for right now, the time that we're living in. I think in the forward of Crossbones issue 1, I mentioned it, but I think that stories play a very special role in our society. You know, that they, you know, what did I say? I said they you know, they surpass our circumstances. You know, they you know, they move us, the reader or even the storyteller, to, you know, be invoked, you know, upon to do something, or to, you know, feel a certain way, or to, think a certain way even. And so I just believe that stories play an important role in our society, and it's important to tell these stories no matter how or what, just to get them across, no matter, you know, what way you do it. For us, it's comic books. And so I've been told that the comic book industry is a dying industry, and I recognize that. I mean, I look at what's going on at Marvel and DC, and I recognize that. I recognize that, you know, the ship might be a drowning ship. But you know what? I love this ship. You know, I love the industry of comic books. And man, I'm going to go down with this ship. And it doesn't matter, you know, again, it doesn't matter how much money I make in the end, as long as these stories get told,
Hmm.
you know?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I feel you on that. Like, if comics are dying, then I'll go with them. That's no
I'll
problem.
die too.
The one reassuring thing that they got me was, you know, one day, John Layman, that he writes Chew
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
now
yeah.
Chew, and you know, incredible guy. He does amazing work. I love all of his stuff.
Yeah.
And I tweeted something at him, and his response was, the sky has always been falling in comics, and yet here they are today.
Yeah. It's true.
And that was all the reassurance I needed. I was like, this guy's been in the actual comics industry since the 90s when they were at their boom. If anybody knows when they're going to die, that guy would know it would have been out. For him to tell me the sky's always been falling lets me know it's always been doomsday, you know?
Yeah, it's true. You know, it's always been 5 minutes till doomsday, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? And honestly, at the same time, there's been a buzz around the indie community that we're almost like rallying together. You know, there's like this fervent belief within the indie community that this time is our time. You know, as we see that Marvel and DC, like they're going down. Unfortunately, I'm a huge DC fan. I also love Marvel, but I'm a huge DC fan. And so
I will say that surprises me. I would have expected you to be more of a Marvel guy.
Really?
Yeah.
I grew up on Batman, man. And so wherever Batman is, I'll follow, you know, all the days of my life. And so it breaks my heart to see these companies that I grew up with, you know, go in the direction that they're going in. But at the same time, you know, for us, the indies, it's like almost like I said, a rallying point. It's like, now is our time to take, you know, this mantle, you know, to be a part of the big two or whatever, you know, to be a part of the big or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like that's the end goal, but at the same time, it is a goal. It is a goal, you know, for people to read our stories, you know. That's what it is.
Yeah. I think I end up saying this to everybody I talk to, but for me, I think one of the more unfortunate things about the comic industry is that superheroes are the face of it, because more often than not, more of the like prolific indie creators, you know, whether we're talking like at Image or some of these people that are out here doing Kickstarters and stuff, you know, like the one thing I hear most commonly from those types, the indie creators, is that they didn't get into comic books until way later because they never liked superheroes. And then somebody showed them an indie comic and they were like, oh, it's more than superheroes. And like, to me, that's the big miss right now with the industry, is that there are so many talented creators out there that don't even know they like comic books because they think they don't like Superman, so they don't like comic books. And that part's not true. Yeah. These are people that would love this medium if they knew if you just look past Superman, there's something there will grab you, you know? And I mean, like everybody, I like the big two. I like the superheroes and all that. But to me, it's a little unfortunate, especially at the moment in time we're in, that superheroes are the face of the industry.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. You know, it's funny because it's like, when you think about it, a lot of the media that we consume on TV or in the movies, that are based off of comic books. You know, and it's like, you look at them and it's like, wait, that was based off a comic book? And it's like not even like superhero related or really anything related. It's like, wait a minute, that was a comic book? Like, and it's crazy because you don't really think about it. Like, I honestly believe that there are so many great titles out there right now. And I'm trying to think of like what my favorite is right now. I mean, there is, you know, the Ice Cream Man is a really big one. I love the Ice Cream Man. You know, the crossover from, you know, Donny Cates, I believe. Something is Killing the Children. Holy cow.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, dude.
How is Netflix not picked that up yet?
I have no idea.
Like, it is just sitting there. Like, it would be so perfect for Netflix. That's so on brand for them. It really is. And for them to have waited this long blows my mind, because it's nothing for Hulu or HBO or somebody to step in and pick that up. You know, like, Netflix is literally leaving money on the table right now. I don't know why they haven't. They don't have to use it right now, but you would have thought that they had already picked it up. To pick up the audience whenever Stranger Things starts to die off. Like, that's exactly who they need to kind of pick up. As that goes away, bring them into that fold. But what are they waiting on? For Hulu to want to make an offer?
Yeah, I have no idea, man. That book is going to be around for years, you know. It's going places, you know. And so, and it goes again, like, it's just, that is comics. You know, it isn't just Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. Those are big things, a part of, you know, comic books, sure. But that's not all that there is. You know, there are so many great stories to be told, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had The Walking Dead kind of broke broke the glass ceiling.
That's true.
Then you had like Preacher came along and just blew people's minds when they found out that was a comic series. I think the most recent example was when Netflix did that movie on the Old Guard,
The Old Guard, yeah.
and people were like, "Oh, this was so good." And I was like, "Yeah, and that's also a comic
Yeah, it was a
series."
comic book.
What?
Yeah.
You know, so we're seeing it more and more, like stuff that happens in comics, but it's not like superheroes in tights, and it gets picked up on TV, and people are going wild for that stuff now. You know, so
Yeah.
hopefully that's kind of the shift we see is, you know, more people start focusing on comics and looking at comics and inject it with a lot more money. You know, because
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. I would
that's
love to
the
see
main
it.
thing it needs right now. If we could
Yeah.
get enough eyeballs and enough people coming in and really moving that economy,
Yeah.
like I don't want to. I'm not like trying to talk down about like just collectors and stuff,
Yeah.
but you know, these people are coming in here and buying 2 and 3 and 4 copies of books, and they're buying
Yeah.
all these covers. But well, it's kind of like Kickstarter, right? You have a funding goal. I want to hit this funding goal, but once you hit that funding goal, the goal is no longer how much money;
Yeah.
it's how many people, how many
Exactly.
backers. And
Yeah.
that's how I feel about comics right now. Is we're in this position that I suspect is a lot like where the '90s was, where you're moving a lot of books, but you don't have a lot of people.
Readers, yeah.
And when one reader goes away, there goes 5 sales. That's
Yep.
not one sale, that's 5 sales, you know. And
Yep.
realistically, they're probably buying 3 books on average, and they're probably buying like 5 copies of that book. So now you're
Yep.
losing like 15 books if that one person were to lose interest or pass away or something, you
Yeah.
know.
Exactly.
And that's a problem, you know. That's to me, that's where the industry's kind of shaky, you know. If we
Yeah.
could get more eyeballs and more readers, even if they're
Mhm.
just picking up 1 book a month, that's a
Yeah.
huge difference, you
It
know.
really is. Yeah. Honestly, it's funny because sometimes, because I go on a weekly basis and I buy, X amount of books,
Yeah.
and it's funny because sometimes like I get this thought and I'm like, man, am I the one person that's carrying this ship right now? Like, am I the one that's carrying this whole industry right now? Like, am I keeping this industry afloat? And it's true. Like, honestly, I've had the thought like, okay, when am I gonna stop? Because it does become like a bill at the end of the month. And, it's like
Mhm.
I'm going every week. I'm buying these things every week, and so it's like, from a financial point of view, it's like, okay, where do I like lower this bill, and where do I lower? Because I don't read all of it. I have a fat stack
Mhm.
right here, and there's like 3 months log of things I haven't read yet, and so it's like, man, it can't just be me, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It can't just be you, or it can't just be whoever.
Yeah.
It needs to be this a multitude of people. It's what I'm trying to say. We need
Yeah.
we need more people to be reading.
More people, more diversity, and more support, you know.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
I think it's great, you know, the collecting market is there and that's great. Like it's always going to do its thing,
Hmm.
but we need more individuals.
Yeah.
That's where we're lacking. It's just like
Yep.
sheer number of people. If more people were buying 1 or 2 comic books a month, I think the industry would explode. It would get so big so fast, you
Yeah.
know. And that's, I mean, that's one thing I talk with a lot of people about is like, how do we get there? Because you know who is doing that? The what's it called? Line webtoons.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they have more subscribers to that platform than we have books we sell every month. Like
Wow.
the
That's
entire
crazy.
industry, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they have millions.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
there's like 3 million people on Webtoon right now, and we're selling like what, maybe 1 million copies of every comic book
Yeah.
a month.
Yeah. It's true. It's true.
And then the other one for me is manga. Like I taught
Yeah.
my kids to read with comic books. They struggled to read, and comic books was simple enough. They felt like they were completing a story and really getting something for what they
Yeah.
were reading. But then once they really like caught on to reading, the first thing they do is go buy manga. And so like
Yeah.
that's I mean, it's great that like people are getting into this stuff, but at the same time, like Marvel and DC and you know, these indies and small press, like we need to figure out what those guys are doing different. Why are people going there, you know?
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. And honestly, it becomes hard, because it's like with webtoons, that's all digital, and it becomes a thing where it's like, okay, now we're excluding or cutting out the middleman, which is comic book shops.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, I don't want to sacrifice, you know, this for that. You know, I want more readers, but I also want to keep this business afloat, you know, because for me, it's like this is a local business and they're already getting hit really hard, you know, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the time that we're living in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, man, okay, if we just all go digital, I can see the benefit in that. But that also has the livelihoods of these shops, you know, hanging in the balance, you know. And so it's like, man, dang it. Like, so that it's like, okay, I don't want to go digital because I want to support this small business. And
Yeah.
so so what's the flip side of that? Um, I don't know. So buy physical, but it becomes hard when like these issues become scarce, you know, because of, you know, collectors or whatever. For example, I know last week or the week before, Daredevil 25 came out, and
Yeah.
that was Elektra's first appearance as Daredevil. And so it's like, what if Joe Schmo isn't the collector and he's just reading the title, you know, and that's his, you know, only title that he picks up? Oh, well, issue 25 is nowhere to be found, you know. So it's like,
Yep.
I'm reading this title but I can't find it anywhere, you know. Now it's on eBay for like, you know, X amount
Mm-hmm.
of dollars, you know. And so
Yeah.
it's I don't know, you know. I don't know what
Yeah.
the
And that's the thing. Like, I really don't know what the solution there is because, like, we say FOC order, pre-order, FOC cutoff dates, you know,
yeah.
pre-order it so they'll have a copy pulled for you, but there's damages and then there's dishonest shop owners and everything else. Like, I'm not saying if you pre-order your books on time and everything, 90% of the time you're probably
Yeah.
going to get them, probably even 95%, you
Yeah.
know. But there is stuff like whenever Seven Secrets or whatever came out, that first
Mhm.
one,
Yeah.
good lord, like even if you pre-ordered it, they were selling like gold, you know.
Yeah.
There's owners that will mark up books as soon as
Hmm.
they come in the shop. So if
Yeah.
Daredevil 25 turns out real hot this week, even if you pre-ordered it, they'll charge you $8 and $10 and $12
Yeah.
for it because that's what the market wants for it, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's a problem. I don't know what the solution is to that, you know.
Yeah. It's hard
But
to say.
it sucks because it's so convenient to read digital books. Like,
It really is.
it doesn't feel the same, you know, and there are some books that do it better than others. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, to like have your iPad and have like
Yeah.
more books than you would ever have in a short box, and you could just
Yeah.
walk out the door with it, you
Yep.
know, like
Exactly.
too convenient, you know. And even like Webtoon, like whenever I find one of those Webtoons that really understands how to use that vertical scroll, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
holy crap, is it engaging? Like I will sit there for hours and
Yeah.
like
Just scrolling.
on like 900 chapters, you know, like
Yeah.
it's crazy. So there's definitely something there. I get it, you know, but I wish somebody more creative than me could figure
Yeah.
out how to solve the local shop crisis, you know.
Yeah. I know. It's sad. And there are a couple here in San Diego that actually closed down. I think one was called San Diego Comics, and they were the oldest ones here in San Diego. They closed their doors, and it's like, man, that's so heartbreaking. You know,
Yeah.
that's so heartbreaking because it's like, and that's out of their hands, you know, this whole pandemic thing, but then also this whole thing with this is a kind of, it's a dying, you know, industry, you know, and so those mixed together make the perfect storm for this one store or, you know, the next store or whatever. And so
Hmm.
it's just heartbreaking. And I don't know, you know, because these are real people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's tough. Like I hate to see them close down, but you know, like me buying one more book wasn't going to help anything, and everybody I know knows that I go to shops, you know.
yeah,
So there's not a lot more I can do on a personal level, you know. I talk
yeah,
about comics all the time on social media. If anybody's wondering where to buy a comic book,
yeah,
ask me. I'll find.
yeah,
I will look up a store in whatever town you're in. Like that's no problem, you know. But
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what the actual solution is to all of that, you
yeah.
know.
It's hard to tell, you know, and
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that at one point it does kind of come down to both Marvel and DC, you know, because they are the ones who are leading this industry, you know, they're the ones who are
Yeah.
spearheading it. And so
Yeah.
it's like, you know, you can't just be doing gimmicks all the time. You know, you can't just be doing gimmicks
Hmm.
to just try to fish for more money. Because again, like you said, like gimmicks just kind of attract more collectors.
Momentary
Yeah,
attention. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it's like it doesn't actually draw more individuals. It just draws more money for you,
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's where I put a lot of the blame for where we're at currently, because Marvel and DC have a huge, I mean, just like deep, deep, deep pockets.
yeah,
For them to correct something is not that big of a deal.
yeah.
The problem that I see the most is like most of the advertising for comic books goes into previews, and the only
Mhm.
people reading previews are people that already read comic books.
Yeah, it's true.
So who are you advertising to? Like, why are you not giving out a free comic at every Marvel movie that hits the
Hmm.
theater?
Yep.
Why? And maybe there's something to be said too. Maybe these shops could be setting up outside of Marvel releases and like selling comic books on the way in or out.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like Marvel and DC have so much opportunity with advertising. Don't advertise to us. I know I could
Yeah.
count like 25 people that if DC and Marvel never said another thing about a book, they would still buy every book that came out.
That's me. That's
Yeah,
me.
like they don't need to advertise to us,
Yeah.
Nobody needed to tell us about King of Black. It was
Yeah.
coming,
Yeah.
Nobody needed to tell us about Endless Winter. It was coming. We're going to
Yep.
get it.
Yep.
But why is every advertising dollar not being spent on people that aren't reading comics?
Yeah.
Why isn't every bookstore just like full of banners and stuff for every local comic shop and every comic book, every floppy issue, But you go in there and they're just advertising regular books and they have some trades in the back corner, like they should be putting anywhere that anybody will read. You need to have a banner that says like, go to your local comic shop,
Yeah. Support local comic book shops.
Mhm. Even Image is big enough. They should be throwing a ton of dollars
True.
at that
Yeah.
too,
Yeah, Image and even Dark Horse,
Yeah, Dark Horse, IDW, and Boom. I think Source Point and all of Scout and all that's probably a little too small to.
Yeah.
But they're making huge leaps and strides just on like organic social media growth too.
It is true. Yeah.
Yeah, but the big ones, like they have too much money not to be just like throwing it at like putting comic books just in front of people.
It's true. It's not that hard. Like, I mean, right now it might be because of this pandemic, but I mean, it's
but
like
2020 aside.
Yeah, I mean, even more so, it's almost like everybody's home, so it's like you have more like opportunity to be putting things in front of their screen. Like why can't you be just I don't know. Like again, I'm there's somebody smarter than me who can figure this out, like you said, and so it's just like
and the other thing I would like to see is like my kids suffer from dyslexia.
Yeah.
Hire some like professionals, hire some like teachers and special education instructors. And I know so many people with like masters and doctorates in like special education and stuff. Like, why are you not consulting with them for like how to make a Spider-Man comic that would read very easily for somebody with dyslexia, and then spend every dollar you have to get schools to put that out on the tables in their libraries and have their teachers hand them out. Don't even tell them nothing. Like the teacher don't even have to be like, read this. Just be like, hey, we're doing this thing and everybody's getting a free comic. And if these kids take it home and open it once, it's going to change their life more than you making them read a book they hate in class,
There you go. That's such a great idea. You should pitch that.
Like, supposedly, I think Marvel or DC kind of worked. Oh, okay. Google's listening.
Right there.
Anyway, right. So yeah, like Marvel and DC, one of them, I think they just worked out a deal where they're working with Scholastic to hopefully get more floppies and trades into like the book fairs and stuff.
Wow, that's cool.
That would change a lot. I used to beg my parents for money for everything, and the only time they would give me money was to buy books. So I would go to the book fair. If they had comic books there, I would have bought those,
Me too. Yeah, exactly.
Instead, I bought a bunch of like Goosebumps and Hank the Cowdog.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what I did too. And that is a really good point. I think that a lot of stories right now are kind of aimed at kind of like an older audience. I mean, I'm one to talk. I'm writing an older book for an older audience, but I mean, when I go, who is going to be reading? Like as I get older, who's going to be reading after me? These kids that you didn't reach. These kids that you didn't write stories for at the time, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's a good point. You know, you should be, you know, marketing to these kids, not marketing to them, you know, just for the sake of getting money, but for the sake of, hey,
Hmm.
this is new viewership. These are
Yeah.
new
It's an
opportunities.
investment. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, and just like you said, kind of like opportunities to teach, to kind of, you know, help to progress certain things, like you said with, you know, with dyslexia and stuff like that. That's a great idea. You know, that is
Yeah.
a great idea. You know, I don't know why they're not doing that already. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading this article the other day, and it's like 2 or 3 years old now at this point. But what they were saying in there is like the biggest reason that they think comic books aren't taken seriously is because comic book creators don't take it seriously.
Mm.
And their example was, like proper grammar and spelling and stuff on the lettering and everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. I mean, we
Yeah.
should make sure that, our letterers know grammar and all that.
Me.
But it got me to thinking, and that's what I thought about. I was like, who are we paying to write stories? These are just people that want to write comic books, and there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But like, why don't you have a division where you're hiring people with like master's degrees and special education to like better
Yeah.
craft comic books to appeal to that demographic, and hire a group that like their specialty is like young adult stuff, and like figure
Mhm.
out how to target those markets, like you said, not for the sake of the money, but because this is an investment. Like
Mhm.
McDonald's, hook them when they're young, like
Yeah.
how much more do they have to hear
Yeah.
like if
Exactly.
you get these kids to love Spider-Man, they'll always love Spider-Man.
Yep.
But you're not going to convince a 30-year-old burnout that like
Yeah.
Spider-Man's the coolest thing if he's never really paid any attention to it,
Exactly. Yeah, that's such a good point. And that kind of goes back to how I got into it. Animated series, X-Men
Mhm.
animated series, all these things. I grew up loving these characters, and so therefore I grew up loving these characters, and so
Yeah.
I bought their stories. I bought into this game. I bought
Yeah.
into it. And so it's like, if you're not reaching these kids, then you're not going to ever have them. You're not going to
Yeah.
have a market, in the future.
Mhm.
And so you can't complain in the future where it's like, I'm getting less viewership, so we're just going to, put out only 2 titles a month, like what
Yeah.
DC is doing. It's like, you can't complain if you're not doing something to actively change that,
Mhm. Yeah.
So.
I hate about like 80-90% of what social media is,
Mhm.
because it's very like fast paced and clickbaity. Like
Uh-huh.
if you look at like cancel culture, like that has to be a side effect of social media, because on network TV it was bad enough they were cutting people down to like they would interview them for 45 minutes and show
Yeah.
20 minutes of it on TV, and so everything gets taken out of context.
Yeah.
And so that was like network TV. Then once you go to social media, the attention span and the amount of time you have was even shorter.
Yeah.
And so now like everything is like, what did they say in this 5-second clip out of a 2-hour interview,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of like what I like about this, and what I do here is like I want to talk to people and like get to know people. And if you talk to people long enough, they get very candid,
Yeah.
and you can't take that out of context. The only problem is I'm a nobody. So the only way I have to advertise effectively
Yeah.
is social media. So like I'm caught in that loop, but my
Mhm.
goal is to, get to a point where like I don't have to advertise as much anymore. Therefore, I don't
Mhm.
have to be as present on social media,
Yeah.
because I do like the connections. Like I tell my friend all the time, like the thing I love about the internet is like I will probably never go to Russia, but I can talk to a guy in Russia.
Yep.
I would love to go to San Diego one day, but who knows,
Hey. Yeah.
But to be able
Come.
to connect with you,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
that would be impossible without the internet and social media and people being able to like proliferate themselves like this, So
Yeah.
it's a yin and a yang, but
It really is.
ultimately I hate how short the attention span is on social media.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even Instagram, that's the longest one, and it's still only like maybe 30 minutes or something for a
Yeah.
post.
It's true, and it's funny because I was actually going to say is like we actually met on social media. We met on Instagram, so it's funny, I feel exactly the same way. Like if I could, I would just delete it all. Like and like sometimes I want to do that, but at the same time I'm like, well, I'm trying to build a brand, you know. Unfortunately, I'm trying to build something, you know. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
you know. But you know, it's like you said, it's like a blessing and it's a curse. It's a yin and a yang, you know. Without these platforms like Instagram, Facebook, you know, Twitter or whatever, I wouldn't have been able to meet. I wouldn't even say half. Nobody in the community that I've met. I wouldn't have been able to meet anybody like Jesse Chisholm, or not just Chisholm, Jesse Bear, or like you, or really anybody, any other creator. So it's a blessing to meet people like you and to meet people in the community and to have these connections that we have. But at the same time, it's like, man, social media is such a cancer, you know. It really is, man. It's so terrible, man.
Yes.
I
I
don't
can't.
know what like the repercussions are it's going to have on the future of our society, you
Yeah.
know. But it's, you know, I don't know. I
Yeah.
have no idea.
I found that like a lot of things have gotten better for me the last, I don't know, probably like couple weeks because I've been like so present on Twitter that it's kind of filtered out all the like negativity. If
Yeah,
I'm positive, I've finally kind of got this point where I've got like this positive circle around me.
yeah.
But oh my God, do I hate Twitter so much? Like,
Yeah, yeah, me too. Yeah,
it
Twitter.
doesn't matter what anybody says. If you say something positive, somebody is going to show up to tell you like
Yeah,
how awful you are for like having a good day and a bad year. You know, like
I know.
oh my
That's
God,
why
I can't stand
I
it.
try to keep it hush hush that I had a great year this year. I'm like, I had a good year. It was great actually, you know. So I try to keep that on the down low, you know.
Yeah, I'm the
So
same way, man. Like I've actually, all things considered, I've had a pretty good year. You know,
yeah,
but it's so hard to say that right now because
yeah,
there's so many people that have went through so much worse. You know, but
yeah, exactly.
I just try to keep it in the context of like within 2020. Like I wouldn't even say this was my best year ever, but within the context of 2020, I've had a overall positive year,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
can't complain about that.
it's true. You know. Thankfully, we're still here and we're still alive. You know, at least we can
Yeah.
say that. You know, at least we can
Oh
say
my
we're
God.
still alive.
Remember March? Oh man, the way that everything came and we didn't
Yeah,
know anything, and it was like
yeah,
we were gonna lock ourselves in our houses and we're all gonna die.
yeah. I know. Oh
And
my
look at us
goodness.
now. We're doing okay. We could be doing a lot better, but we're doing okay.
Yeah, we're surviving. You know, we're still alive. You know, but yeah, it's funny because it's like people think that it's going to end in 2020. It's like, oh, I can't wait for 2020 to end. It's like, I don't think that's how things work. You know,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's not like it just ends with the year. Like Corona's not going to go away with 2020. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, so on and so forth with everything else that's going on.
Yeah, I think things are going to get incrementally better over the course of next year, and then in 22 they'll probably get dramatically better. But
We can hope.
yeah,
We can
right.
hope.
To
Hope.
me, like my outlook is 2023. Like every business should be figuring out what they need to do to survive the next 2 years.
Hmm.
If you can figure out how to survive the next 2 years, I think we'll be okay. But
Yeah,
that's what you got to focus on. The next 2 years are still going to be rough as
they
everything
really
kind
are.
of gets back.
Yeah, it's true. And I think that switching topics, also in the same vein though, I think that that's kind of like what Warner Brothers is doing, like with their movie slates. You know, like doing like halvesies, like half or not even half. They're releasing at the same time. You know,
Hmm.
releasing their movies in theaters and you know on HBO Max digitally. You know, and so I think that you know the fan in me doesn't want them to do that. Like I desire for movie theaters to thrive. The same thing with comic book shops. You know, I desire movie theaters to last forever. You know, I don't want things to move in the digital era, but at the same time, from you know a business perspective, that's kind of smart. You know, it's a smart thing to do. You know, so that you can still have that audience that you
Hmm.
made these movies for. You know, and so I think that you know just like you said, moving forward into the next couple years, people are just gonna have to figure things out. You know,
Yeah.
companies are gonna have to figure things out, how to you know function, you know, how to get things done. You know,
Hmm.
it's so yeah,
Yeah. That was the first thing I said whenever the HBO news dropped. I was like, yeah, corporations are data driven. They have data that shows the best way they survive the next 2 years is to do this, you
yeah,
know? So I wouldn't be surprised. I think Disney Plus is going to be able to get away with a lot more because Disney operates with a completely different model.
Yeah.
They have a lot more revenues of streams of revenue and stuff. But
Yeah.
I guarantee you that AT&T, Warner Brothers have data that shows the way you survive the next 2 years with theaters being the way they are is to start just releasing everything same day.
Yeah. Which is
I bet we'll see
unfortunate.
like all of the 2021. I bet in 2022 you'll see some movies do and some just go only to theaters and
Yeah.
stuff. They'll
Yeah.
kind of mix it then, and probably then in 2023 we'll see everything go back to just straight
Yeah.
theatrical releases.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of sad because there's just a lot of great movies coming out next year, man. Like, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
the slate that HBO dropped alone. I mean, Matrix 4,
Yeah.
Dune.
Yeah. Dune. Yeah.
They went ahead and moved the Batman back another year, so I
Yeah.
bet that's going to go to theaters in
Oh,
2022,
thank God.
right?
Thank God.
There was at least one other movie on there that I'm just like,
Um,
holy crap, that's going to be like that. Those
Godzilla
are,
versus Kong.
oh yeah,
Uh,
there's so
Mortal
many
Kombat.
theater movies. Oh yeah, Mortal Kombat, like
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of movies, great movies, big movies coming out. And it's,
mhm.
at the same time, it's like, man, if I really want to, I could, off the record, I'm not taking this for. If I really wanted to, I could just pirate those movies like first day, if I
Mhm.
really wanted to.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that I would. Don't, FBI, if you're watching this, don't take that. But
Oh yeah, I
it's
know. I know what you mean, though. Yeah, like there was nothing preventing us from watching these day one digital if we really wanted to.
Mhm.
And what they've done is symbolic. I think what they're looking at is they needed more subscribers than they have right now, and
Mhm.
probably um, market research is showing that people don't feel like the $15 value is there,
Mhm.
and they feel like they couldn't charge less than 15 and make any money, and
Yeah.
so they're in between is trying. I almost guarantee you they're going to be collecting numbers a lot on
Oh
everything
yeah.
that releases to
Yeah.
figure out what movies they can get away with doing this and what movies they could get away with holding for the theater, like
Yeah.
what the actual line is post
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I totally agree. 100%.
I think they're taking a loss to gain data and
Yeah.
subscribers.
Yeah. And I think that, those big movies are the things to do that too. Like if they were to do it for like a small movie, like one, I don't even know, just a stupid movie that nobody would like really pay to see. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think that they would be collecting the data that they need, And
Mhm.
so doing movies like Dune and, even Wonder Woman,
Yeah.
and, like Matrix 4, like those are the movies they need to do those for in order to
Mhm.
collect this data,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I would love to see those movies in theaters.
Mhm. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of re-release
That's
once
true.
things really get back up and rolling,
Yeah.
like an extended version or something that
Yeah.
they put in theaters, and you can only see it if you go to the theater. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we will get the opportunity to see all these movies in theater, but it does. It's very disappointing that like our first Matrix 4 experience is going to be on my awesome TV at home, but it's not a
Yeah.
giant screen.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I feel you, man. Dang it.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart thinking about it. That's what I'm like thinking. I'm like, dang
Yeah.
it.
Like I love my TV. I think it's a great TV. I want to watch stuff on it, but I don't know, man. Like I just remember back to like whenever I saw the wall of glass turn into water,
Uh-huh.
like in the first Matrix, it was just
Yeah.
like I can't possibly imagine only seeing that on a small screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like there's some things I feel like you have to experience on the big screen so that when you watch it at home later, you know what it feels like,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the whole purpose of cinema,
Mm.
and I'm a huge cinema fan. That's like touching a whole another topic, but I feel like I can talk about this stuff for hours,
I know, right?
I think that cinema is an art, and that originally it is meant to go to the big screen first, and then it's supposed to be experienced at home, now, and as we're living in the 21st century, that's how it is. But it just it breaks my heart to think about, like, and I'm thinking about like millionaires, that's breaking my heart for them. But
Yeah,
it's
right.
like
My
it breaks
heart
my
bleeds
heart
for you.
but like it's true because they're artists, and so in a way they are, and so it breaks my heart for these guys who are these people, not just guys, these people who are making these movies intended for this certain type of, way for it to be viewed, and then it's
Mm.
just like second rate, and it's like, dang, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at Christopher Nolan, like he's getting a lot of flack lately, and
Yeah.
I understand how like I don't know how to say this without offending people, but cinema dummies feel like he's just being kind of an asshole about it. But truth be told, he has a point. Like you said, like could you imagine seeing that building wrap around and flip over from Inception? Could you
No.
imagine seeing that only on your TV?
No, that would have
There's no
been
way, you know. And then
anticlimactic.
I also heard some Hollywood insiders, some writers, they were talking, and what he was saying, because he said, like it sucks going to bed thinking that you made a magnificent piece of art and then waking up finding out that you work for a TV streaming company.
Yeah.
And people really hated that. And then I listened to these insiders and they're like, no, what he's saying is literally like they didn't even consult with most of the creators on those movies when they decided to make that move.
Yep.
Sometimes they didn't even consult with producers or studios or anything on that stuff. They just decided they were going to release it all. And people were finding out that the movie that they made, that they worked so hard on, they woke up reading in the press that it was going to be streaming,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, Christopher Nolan's right in what he's saying. Like, you didn't know that they were going to do that. That's completely different from getting everybody's agreement on that.
Mm-hmm. It's true, and it's sad. Like, again, like they're millionaires, but they're artists nonetheless, and they built this piece of art for this specific medium, and like for it to be taking out from that medium to, a medium that like it was going to inevitably go to, but still like it's not intended. It's not going to where its intended medium. It's sad. And like I don't know. I feel like
what if you worked with Roman to like create a comic book, right?
Yeah.
And you got this comic book ready to go, and then the publisher's like, it's gonna be a little too pricey to print the pictures, so we're just gonna do a little prose novella for you and put that out. Like, that's not the medium I wrote in. Like, you can't just do that. It doesn't translate the same. And I think people are missing that. They don't understand. Like, you're whether you're a starving artist or a millionaire artist, like there's that connection of like, I understand, that you don't feel good about them doing that to you,
Exactly.
It's very like empathetic.
Yeah, it sucks. I don't know. There's nothing we can do about it. It just breaks my heart.
Yeah. And I hope that, like I said, I hope they get re-releases and they do something to make some reparations on that on the back end. Because that's crazy. I don't think any of those people are. I don't think Christopher Nolan's saying like, "Oh, I'm not making any money or I'm not getting paid for this." Like, they already got paid to make the movie. These are artists that are complaining that their art's not being received the way that they want it to be received, and that's a fair complaint.
Yeah. I agree. I agree 100%. I don't know. Poor Christopher Nolan. Poor Christopher Nolan.
All right, man. Well, I've had a blast talking with you.
It was really fun.
That terrible social media stuff. Do you want to tell anybody where they should look for you guys?
Yes. If you
sell the books on your website, right?
Yeah, we sell all our books, Ether, Crossbones, Burlap. You can get them all on our website at covenantcomics.com/store. We also have them available digitally. So it's like $1 a piece, I believe, or $1.50 a piece. And so if you don't want to, get physical and you just want to get digital and get it at a cheaper price, you can get it at our store. And so if you unfortunately use social media, you can follow us on Instagram at Covenant_comics. Also on Facebook, Twitter. We don't really use those as much, but we still got them, So yeah, check us out.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I highly suggest all of those books. So covenantcomics.com, y'all should go over there and buy them. Now that you say it, I do remember Burlap being like super cheap. I was like, holy crap, are they letting me steal them? Like, did I log in on the backside or something?
We want people to read it. Remember the hashtag. If you don't read Burlap, you're stupid.